She said it quietly, almost as if the words had slipped past her before she could stop them. You still make my heart race. I don't think I breathed for a full second. The way she said still, like it belonged to another time, another version of us, made the air between us hum. It was a late afternoon in her kitchen. The kind of soft, golden light that makes everything look like memory. She was standing by the counter, sleeves rolled up, hair tied in a loose knot that kept coming undone. I had stopped by to return a book I'd borrowed from her brother, my friend, but he wasn't home. Just her. Just us. Elena. She smiled the same way she always had, a little lopsided, like she didn't trust herself to show too much. You've grown taller, she said, eyes flicking up and down as if comparing me to a younger version she used to tease. And you haven't changed at all, I said before I could think better of it. She laughed softly, a low, breathy sound that filled the quiet. That's not true. It wasn't. She changed in the kind of way that photographs never quite catch, slower, subtler. There was something softer around her edges now, like the years had worn her defenses into something almost gentle. She poured 2 cups of coffee, though I hadn't asked for one, and handed me a mug. Our fingers brushed, nothing dramatic, just a whisper of contact, but it was enough to send a small spark crawling up my arm. She noticed it too. I could tell by the way she paused, eyes lingering a moment too long before she looked away. Still drink it black? She asked. I nodded. You remember that? I remember a lot more than you think, she said, barely audible. The room went quiet again. The ticking of the wall clock sounded louder than it should have. Outside, the light shifted, warm orange bleeding into evening. I found myself studying the tiny things, the faint line at the corner of her mouth when she smiled, the glint of her wedding ring that wasn't there anymore. I wanted to ask about it, but the silence between us didn't feel like one to fill with questions. She leaned against the counter, her shoulder brushing mine as she reached for something behind me, a glass, maybe, though it didn't seem like she needed it. You shouldn't look at people that way, she murmured. I turned toward her. What way? She didn't answer right away. Her eyes met mine, steady, unflinching, and for a moment I thought she might actually tell me. But then she smiled, that same small, careful smile. Like you're trying to remember them. I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her words settle somewhere deep in my chest. You still have that camera? She asked, nodding toward my bag. Always, I said. It helps me see things I'd otherwise miss. She tilted her head, curious. Like what? Moments like this, I said before I could stop myself. Something shifted then, barely, but undeniably. Her breath caught. Her eyes flicked to my mouth, then back to my eyes, as if realizing too late how close we were standing. The air felt charged, thick enough to touch. Then, a sound. The front door creaked open. She straightened instantly, stepping back as if the space between us had burned her. Her hand brushed her hair, her voice steady but thinner now. That'll be your friend, she said, but her eyes didn't move from mine. For a heartbeat, neither did I. And in that pause, that fragile second before everything reset, I realized she hadn't denied it. She hadn't said I was wrong. She'd only said still. The next time I saw her, it wasn't planned. I dropped by her brother's place again. Or maybe that's just what I told myself. The truth was simpler. I wanted to see her. I wasn't sure why, or what I expected, but when she opened the door instead of him, I forgot my excuse entirely. She blinked, surprised, then smiled, small, uncertain. He's out of town for the weekend, she said. But you can come in if you want. I should have said no. I didn't. The apartment smelled faintly of rain, windows open, curtains moving just enough to make the air feel alive. She was barefoot, wearing an oversized sweater and the kind of tired expression that made her seem even more real than I remembered. She made tea this time. Not coffee. Something softer. As she moved about the kitchen, I caught details I hadn't before, the faint scar on her wrist, the way her fingers fidgeted with her ringless hand. It was habit, maybe, reaching for something that wasn't there anymore. You and your brother used to come here after class, she said, smiling faintly. You were always quieter. Observant. I thought you didn't notice, I said. Oh, I noticed. The kettle whistled. She poured the tea carefully, hands trembling just enough to make the light catch on the surface. Her ex-husband had been one of those names people whispered, older, respected, absent more than present. I'd only met him once. Even then, I'd seen how she smiled with her mouth but not her eyes. Now, years later, that same guardedness lingered in the air between us. You ever get lonely? I asked before I could stop myself. She glanced up, startled. Then, after a long pause, all the time. Something in her tone made my chest tighten. I reached for my cup, fingers brushing hers. She didn't move away. The touch was light, deliberate, and far too short. She exhaled slowly, as if weighing what the moment meant. You shouldn't look at me like that, she said again, softer this time, almost pleading. Maybe I can't help it. The silence that followed wasn't comfortable, but it wasn't empty either. It was full of everything we weren't saying. She turned toward me, her shoulder brushing mine as she leaned over to set her cup down. Her hair grazed my cheek. I caught the faint scent of something floral, not perfume, more like the ghost of it. Her voice was close when she spoke. This isn't supposed to happen. I know. And yet, her eyes found mine, steady, conflicted, alive. For a heartbeat, it felt like the world outside had gone still. No wind, no sound, just the two of us suspended in something we both knew better than to name. Her hand lifted, maybe to brush my arm, maybe to stop herself, but she didn't pull back this time. Her fingertips rested against my sleeve, the faintest pressure, a silent confession. Then she smiled, not the polite kind, but one edged with something dangerous and real. Tell me, Noah, she whispered, voice trembling just enough to give her away. What are we doing? I didn't answer. But I didn't move either. And that, somehow, said enough. It started raining again that night, the kind that presses against the windows like it's trying to get in. Elena stood by the glass, watching the street blur into silver streaks. I sat on the couch behind her, pretending to look at the photos on my camera but seeing only her reflection. Still chasing storms? She asked, her tone teasing but distant. Sometimes, I said. They make everything sharper. She turned slightly, her silhouette framed by the pale light outside. Or maybe you just like watching what gets washed away. I smiled faintly. Maybe. Her eyes lingered a second too long before she looked away. The air between us was heavy, not uncomfortable, just full of something neither of us could name. The kettle began to hum again, that soft, steady sound that always seemed to fill the pauses we couldn't. She crossed the room to turn it off, passing close enough that her sweater brushed my arm. The contact sent a current through me, fast and uninvited. She noticed. I could tell by the way she froze mid-step, by the way her breath hitched. Before either of us could move, a phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at it, her brother's name lighting up the screen. Her eyes flicked toward me, startled then guilty. She hesitated before answering. Hey, she said, her voice steady but her posture too still. Yeah, he's here. We're just catching up. I looked away, pretending to adjust the lens on my camera, but my pulse was hammering in my throat. She laughed at something he said, that practiced, careful laugh that didn't reach her eyes. When the call ended, she set the phone down slowly, like it might explode. You don't have to stay, she murmured. If this feels wrong? I finished for her. Her gaze snapped to mine, sharp, defensive. I didn't say that. But you thought it. She opened her mouth, then stopped. Her lips parted just slightly, words caught somewhere between reason and want. I stood, moving closer without meaning to. The rain outside grew louder, drumming against the windows in sync with my heartbeat. Elena, I said quietly. She turned toward me, and for a moment, it felt like the world tilted, her face inches from mine, her breath warm against my skin. Neither of us moved. Her hand lifted, hesitated in the air. "This can't," she began, but the rest of the sentence dissolved when her fingers found my wrist. The touch was light, trembling, but it burned. "I know," I whispered. And yet neither of us pulled away. The space between us shrank to a breath, a heartbeat, a possibility. I could see the faint pulse in her throat, the way her eyes flicked to my mouth before she forced them away. Then, another sound. A knock at the door. We froze. The world came rushing back all at once, the rain, the hum of the lights, the impossible distance we suddenly remembered we had to keep. She stepped back quickly, her hands slipping from mine, voice barely above a whisper. "Don't." But her eyes said the opposite. And when I finally turned toward the door, I knew, whatever this was, it wasn't ending tonight. It was just beginning to hurt. The storm had passed, but the air hadn't cleared. It clung to the room, humid, heavy, electric. Elena moved around quietly, collecting the empty cups from the night before. Her hair was still damp from the rain, curling at the edges, loose against her neck. I watched her, pretending not to. "You didn't have to stay," she said without looking at me. "You didn't tell me to leave." She paused, her back to me. "Would you have listened?" "No," I admitted. That made her turn. Her eyes caught mine, tired but burning with something unspoken. "You shouldn't say things like that," she whispered. "Why not?" "Because I'll believe you." The words hit harder than they should have. I took a step closer, not touching her yet. She didn't move away, though I saw the hesitation in her breath, that small rise and fall that betrayed everything she was trying to hold steady. "Elena," I said, her name quieter than a thought. Her eyes softened, then darkened. "You don't know what you're doing," she said. "Then tell me." She shook her head, a faint tremor in her hands as she set the cups down on the counter. "You think this is something simple, some story that ends with a line and a song. But it's not. It's—" She trailed off, searching for words that wouldn't come. "Wrong?" I asked again. She looked up sharply. "Stop saying that." "Then what is it?" Her silence was the only answer, but it wasn't nothing. It was the kind that filled every inch of space between us. When I reached out, it wasn't planned. My hand brushed a strand of hair from her face, my fingers grazing her temple. She closed her eyes at the touch, just for a second, a surrender too brief to name. "You should go," she said finally, voice trembling. "Do you want me to?" She didn't answer. Her hand found my chest, not to push me away, but to steady herself. I could feel the warmth of her palm through the thin fabric, the faint tremor of restraint. "You make everything feel." She stopped, biting her lip. "Feel what?" I asked. She exhaled, eyes flicking between my mouth and the floor. "Like I could make the same mistake twice." I caught her hand before she could pull it away. She didn't resist. The tension between us wasn't a line anymore, it was a fuse. "You call it a mistake," I said, voice low. "But you're still standing here." Her breath caught. "Don't make this harder." "I'm not the one pretending it's easy." The silence stretched. Outside, a car passed, headlights sliding across the walls, a flash of motion in an unmoving world. Then she stepped forward, just one step, close enough that her breath warmed the edge of my jaw. For a moment, I thought she would finally let go. Her lips parted, her voice barely a whisper. "If you don't stop looking at me like that." The rest of her sentence vanished. The door creaked. We froze. Someone's voice, faint, distant, called her name from the hallway. Her hand slipped from mine. But this time, her eyes didn't. The next morning, the apartment felt smaller. Quieter. Like the air itself remembered too much. Elena moved carefully, deliberate, distant, as if pretending last night hadn't happened, as if the space between us hadn't almost disappeared. She poured coffee without asking if I wanted any. I took it anyway. Neither of us said good morning. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was aware. She finally spoke, softly, but with that edge she used when trying not to show what she really felt. My brother called last night. My chest tightened. When? Right after you left the kitchen. Her tone wasn't accusing. It was worse, calm, too calm. What did he say? I asked. That he knows you've been stopping by. Her eyes flicked up then, steady, unblinking. And that he's starting to wonder why. I froze. And what did you tell him? That you were helping me with a project. A pause. A lie. The first one I've told him in years. The weight of her words settled between us like a storm cloud that wouldn't move. Elena, don't. She set her cup down, hands trembling. You think this is some secret world we get to build, but it's not. People notice things. They talk. She turned away, but I stepped forward, not close enough to touch, just enough to make her feel it. You think I care what they say? You should, she said sharply, spinning to face me. Her voice cracked just slightly. You're 26, Noah. You have your whole life to make mistakes that don't include me. The words hit like a slap, but her eyes betrayed her. They were wet, wide, full of everything her voice refused to carry. I took another step. You think this is a mistake? She didn't answer. I reached for her hand slowly, just a brush of fingers. She didn't pull away, but her pulse fluttered beneath my thumb. Then she said it. I'm scared of you. The words were barely there, but they broke something open in both of us. Why? I asked, voice low. Her eyes softened, mouth trembling. Because you make me remember what it feels like to be wanted. The room went still. The confession hung in the air like heat. My breath caught, hers did too. Without thinking, I reached up and brushed a strand of hair from her face. Her skin was warm beneath my fingertips, her breath shallow. For a moment, she leaned into the touch, eyes closing, body swaying closer as though her resolve had finally cracked. Then a knock rattled the door. We both flinched. Her brother's voice, faint but unmistakable, came from the hall. Elena? You home? She stared at me, panic flickering across her face. Go, she mouthed. I hesitated, every instinct screaming not to move. Her hand pressed against my chest, trembling, desperate. Please! I nodded once, stepping back toward the bedroom door. Before I slipped away, she whispered, barely audible, but certain. This doesn't change what I said. Then she turned toward the door, pulling her composure around her like armor. And I knew, whatever came next, we'd already crossed the line. I didn't see her for 3 days after that. 3 long, restless days where every sound felt like it might be her voice, every passing car like it might be her leaving for good. When she finally called, her voice was quiet, steady, too steady. Can you come by? I didn't ask why. I just went. The apartment was dim when I arrived, curtains half drawn, the air still carrying the faint scent of rain. She stood near the window again, barefoot, arms crossed, as if holding herself together. I shouldn't have asked you here, she said as I stepped inside. But you did, I said. Her eyes flicked toward me, sharp at first, then soft. You always do that. Do what? Answer the part one didn't say. I moved closer, slow enough for her to stop me if she wanted. She didn't. You lied for me, I said. I lied because of you, she corrected. Her voice trembled, just once. And I can't keep doing that. The distance between us was down to inches now. I could see the reflection of myself in her eyes, the fear, the want, the pull neither of us could explain anymore. Elena, I whispered. I never wanted this to hurt you. Her laugh was quiet, almost bitter. Then you shouldn't have looked at me that way. She took a step closer, closing what little space was left. I could feel her breath now, warm, uneven. Do you think I haven't tried to stop? She whispered. Every time you leave, I tell myself that's it. And then I remember how it feels when you're here. Her hand lifted, hesitated, then found my face, her thumb tracing the edge of my jaw. The touch was light, trembling, but deliberate. For a moment, neither of us breathed. This isn't fair to you, she said. Then let me decide that, I replied. She searched my eyes, looking for something, maybe permission, maybe the strength to stop. Whatever she found, it made her exhale like she'd been holding her breath for years. The air thickened, not with words, but with the quiet certainty of what we both already knew. She leaned in, close enough that her hair brushed against my cheek. My hand found her waist, instinctively, barely touching. Her eyes fluttered shut. And then she stopped, just before the distance disappeared. "Noah," she breathed, voice breaking. "If we do this, there's no going back." I swallowed hard. Maybe we were never supposed to. For a heartbeat, time stretched, fragile, infinite. Then she leaned in the last inch. Her forehead rested against mine. Her lips hovered, trembling, almost there, not yet touching, but enough to burn. "I don't know what happens after this," she whispered. "Neither do I," I said. "But I know what happens if we don't." The silence that followed wasn't hesitation anymore. It was understanding. And when she finally closed that last breath of distance, everything that had been withheld, feared, and fought for found its answer. Not in words. In the quiet, inevitable way two people finally stop pretending they can't feel what they do. The world felt quieter afterward. Not calm, just real. Elena sat beside me on the couch, her hair still tousled, her breathing unsteady, her eyes softer than I'd ever seen them. Outside, the rain had finally stopped, leaving behind that faint scent of wet pavement and new beginnings. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Words didn't fit what the silence already said. She was the one who finally broke it. "I keep thinking someone's going to knock again," she murmured, tracing the rim of her coffee cup with her finger. I smiled faintly. "And if they do?" She looked at me, not with fear this time, but something quieter. "Acceptance. Then they'll have to wait." That made me laugh, and the sound, hers and mine together, felt like the first easy thing in weeks. "I spent so long convincing myself this couldn't happen," she said softly. "That it would ruin something, him, you, me. But I don't feel ruined." "What do you feel?" I asked. She tilted her head, thinking. "Terrified," she said with a wry smile. "And alive." I nodded. "That's fair." Her hand found mine, not like before, not hesitant or fleeting. It just stayed there. Her thumb brushed slow circles against my skin, and every small motion felt like a promise we weren't quite ready to say out loud. "I don't know what happens next," she admitted. "Neither do I," I said, echoing her words from that night. "But I want to find out." She leaned her head on my shoulder. The weight of it felt right, the kind of quiet contact that didn't need to prove itself anymore. I could feel her smile against the fabric of my shirt, small and real. "You know," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "you still make my heart race." I turned toward her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Good," I said, my voice low. "I don't ever want that to stop." Her eyes met mine, tired, warm, and filled with something that wasn't hesitation anymore. Just peace. We sat there like that, no music, no rain, no storm left between us, just the steady rhythm of two people who had finally stopped fighting what was always inevitable. When she lifted her face to kiss me, it wasn't rushed or uncertain. It was slow, steady, like she'd finally decided there was no reason to hold back. And for once, there wasn't. The outside world could say what it wanted, about the years between us, the timing, the rules. But in that quiet living room, none of it mattered. We weren't breaking anything anymore. We were just beginning something neither of us had the courage to name until now. I brushed my thumb along her jaw, and she smiled against my touch, the kind of smile that meant we're here now. No secrets. No pretending. Just us.